Jason Hart had always preferred the quiet solitude of the Arizona desert. The vast, empty expanse of sun-baked rock and whispering winds made it easier to think or forget. A freelance geologist, he spent his days exploring canyons, cataloging rare minerals, and avoiding the noise of the bustling human world. But on this particular evening, as he packed his equipment into the back of his battered truck, the quiet shattered. A sudden, deafening roar split the sky, followed by a streak of fire tearing across the horizon. Jason squinted, watching as the fiery trail ended in an explosion far off in the desert, a plume of smoke curling into the fading twilight. His curiosity burned brighter than his sense of caution. "Probably a meteorite," he muttered, throwing the truck into gear. But that was one hell of a crash. 15 minutes later, after navigating the rough terrain, Jason arrived at the impact site. What he found was no meteor. Nestled in a smoking crater was a sleek, alien vessel, its surface shimmering like liquid silver. Jagged metal fragments scattered across the sand, their edges glowing faintly. The air smelled of ozone and burned plastic, and the hum of strange, dying energy filled the space. Jason's pulse quickened. He fumbled for his flashlight, sweeping the beam across the wreckage. It landed on something that made him freeze, a figure, crumpled and motionless, half buried beneath a piece of debris. It wasn't human. The being's form was delicate, almost ethereal, with limbs that seemed both familiar and alien. It looked like her skin glowed faintly, an iridescent sheen that shimmered between silver and pale gold. Her hair, or what seemed like hair, floated lightly around her face as though untouched by gravity. Jason's instincts kicked in. "You're not leaving her out here," he muttered to himself. His survival pack was always stocked with first aid supplies, and though he doubted they were designed for alien physiology, it was better than nothing. He approached cautiously, kneeling beside the figure. "Hey," he said, his voice low and steady. "Can you hear me? Are you alive?" The alien's eyes fluttered open large, luminous orbs the color of molten amber. Her gaze fixed on him, filled with a mix of pain and desperation. She whispered something, her voice melodic but unintelligible. Jason held up his hands, hoping to appear non-threatening. "I'm going to help you," he said. He didn't know if she could understand, but she seemed to relax slightly. The debris pinning her leg was heavy, but Jason managed to shift it after a few grueling minutes. Her leg looked injured, bent at an unnatural angle, but there was no visible blood, at least none he could recognize. Carefully, he lifted her into his arms. She was surprisingly light, her body cool to the touch. Jason carried her back to his truck, his mind racing. What was she? Where had she come from? And more importantly, was anyone or anything coming after her? The drive to his makeshift lab was tense. Every few moments, Jason glanced at the alien in the passenger seat, half expecting her to vanish like a dream. But she remained there, her breathing shallow but steady, her head leaning against the cracked window. By the time they arrived, the desert night had turned cold, stars glittering in a vast, indifferent sky. Jason parked the truck and carried the alien inside, laying her on the padded table he used for examining rock samples. He turned on the harsh overhead lights and winced. They made her injuries look even worse. "All right," he said, grabbing his first aid kit. "Let's see what I can do." As he worked, he noticed strange details about her anatomy. Her skin seemed to repair itself slowly, almost like a living fabric. Her breathing was rhythmic but shallow, as if she were conserving energy. Jason wrapped her injured leg with a splint and cleaned a deep gash on her arm, careful not to damage her glimmering skin. Through it all, she remained silent, watching him with those amber eyes. Finally, he stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow. "That's the best I can do for now. You're stable, I think." The alien blinked slowly, her lips moving as she whispered something again. This time, she pointed to a device on her belt, a small, spherical gadget that looked like a cross between a gemstone and a piece of machinery. Jason hesitated before reaching for it. The moment he touched it, the device pulsed with light and emitted a soft hum. Then it spoke. Gratitude, a voice said, smooth and otherworldly. Translation initializing. Jason's jaw dropped. He looked from the device to the alien, who gave him a faint nod. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. The device translated, and the alien replied, her voice still weak. "Lyra," she said. "I am. Lyra. You saved me." Jason nodded, his mind reeling. "Lyra. Okay. I'm Jason." "Jason," the device repeated in her melodic tone. "Where are you from?" he asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Her amber eyes closed briefly, and she whispered one word before succumbing to unconsciousness, "Alicia." Jason sat back, the name ringing in his ears. He had no idea what Alicia was or where it was located, but one thing was clear: his quiet, solitary life in the desert was over. Jason sat in his makeshift lab, staring at the unconscious alien on his examination table. Lyra, her name echoed in his mind. She had stabilized overnight, her breathing steady and her faintly glowing skin regaining its lustrous hue. Yet, the surreal nature of the situation left Jason feeling as though he were balancing on the edge of reality. The following morning, Lyra stirred. Her amber eyes fluttered open, scanning her surroundings before landing on Jason. A flicker of panic crossed her features, but Jason raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe. I won't hurt you." Her gaze flicked to the translation device on her belt. Jason placed it gently in her hand. She activated it, and after a brief hum, her melodic voice filled the room, translated into smooth English. "Where am I?" she asked weakly. "Earth," Jason replied, pulling a chair closer. "You crash-landed in the desert. I found you and brought you here." Her face softened, but her brows knit together in concern. "My ship. Is it Dash?" Jason hesitated. "It's in pretty bad shape. I didn't see anyone else. Was there anyone with you?" Lyra's eyes closed for a long moment, and her body seemed to tremble. "No," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was alone." Jason watched her closely. She seemed devastated, her delicate features etched with pain that went beyond her physical injuries. Despite her alien appearance, the raw emotion she displayed felt achingly familiar. He reached out hesitantly and placed a hand on the edge of the table. "I'm sorry," he said, unsure of what else to offer. Lyra opened her eyes and studied him. "You saved me," she said, her voice filled with quiet gratitude. "Why?" Jason shrugged. "It was the right thing to do. You were hurt and needed help. I couldn't just leave you out there." A faint smile crossed her lips. "You are compassionate. Rarely have I encountered such kindness in my travels." Jason blinked, intrigued. "You've been to other planets?" She nodded, her expression tinged with sadness. "Many. My people are explorers, but also wanderers. Our home is complicated." Her eyes seemed to darken, the amber light dimming. "But this is not the time to speak of such things." "My thanks, Jason." As the days passed, Lyra began to recover. Her injuries, though severe, seemed to heal faster than Jason expected. Her glowing skin knitted itself together, and her strength returned in small increments. In turn, she shared stories about her world, Alicia, a planet of luminous forests, oceans that sparkled like gemstones, and towering spires that touched the sky. "Our people are one with our world," Lyra explained one evening as they sat outside beneath the stars. Her voice, filtered through the translator, had become almost soothing to Jason. "Our energy flows through it, and it through us. It is symbiotic." Jason listened intently, captivated. "It sounds beautiful," he said, looking up at the vast sky. Why leave it? Lyra hesitated, her gaze distant. Beauty can be fragile, Jason. Even the brightest stars are not immune to fading. He wanted to press her further but sensed the weight of her words. Instead, he turned the conversation to lighter topics, asking about her ship and the technology she used. Lyra eagerly shared details, though much of it went over Jason's head. The ship's propulsion system alone sounded centuries ahead of anything humans could achieve. In return, Jason shared snippets of his own life. He showed her some of the minerals he'd collected over the years, explaining their unique properties and how they formed. Lyra examined each one with fascination, marveling at the variety of Earth's natural resources. Your world is rich in potential, she said, holding a piece of quartz up to the light. It reminds me of how Alicia once was. Jason noticed the wistful tone in her voice. You really miss it, don't you? Lyra nodded. It is not just my home. It is part of me. Being separated from it is like losing a piece of my soul. Jason felt a pang of sympathy. If there's a way to help you get back, I'll do it. Her eyes widened, the amber glow intensifying. You would do that for me? Of course, Jason said. You've got people waiting for you, right? Lyra hesitated, then shook her head. No, she said softly. My people would not welcome me back. Jason frowned. Why not? Her gaze dropped to the ground. I cannot tell you everything, Jason. Not yet. Just know that my crash here was no accident. It was sabotage. Jason leaned back, his mind racing. You mean someone tried to kill you? Yes, she said, her voice trembling slightly. And if they learn I survived, they will come for me. Jason's stomach tightened. He thought back to the wreckage, the strange energy pulsing through it. What if someone did come looking for her? What if they were already on their way? We'll figure it out, he said firmly, surprising himself with his own confidence. You're not alone in this. Lyra looked at him, her expression unreadable. Slowly, a small, genuine smile appeared on her face. Thank you, Jason. For everything. In the days that followed, their bond deepened. Despite the gulf of difference between them, they found a shared sense of curiosity and wonder. Jason began to see Lyra not just as an otherworldly visitor, but as a person, a brave, intelligent, and vulnerable soul who had been thrust into circumstances beyond her control. For the first time in years, Jason felt as though his life had purpose. And for the first time since landing on Earth, Lyra felt hope. But both knew that their fragile peace could not last forever. The cool desert breeze filtered through the open windows of Jason's lab as the soft hum of Lyra's ship's salvageable tech filled the air. Over the past few days, Jason had worked tirelessly alongside Lyra to scavenge what they could from the wreckage, piecing together tools to repair her translation device and begin analyzing the faint signals her ship had sent before crashing. Their quiet collaboration felt natural, even comforting. But Lyra had grown more distant since the night she revealed her crash wasn't accidental. Jason noticed her troubled expressions, the way her glowing skin seemed dimmer during the quiet moments when she thought no one was watching. Something weighed heavily on her, and it was more than just her survival. One evening, as they sat under the starlit sky sharing a meal of earth food, Lyra had taken a surprising liking to peanut butter. She broke the silence. Jason, she began, her voice softer than usual. There is something I must tell you. Something important. Jason put down his coffee mug, his brow furrowing. Okay. What's on your mind? Lyra hesitated, the translator humming faintly as it processed her words. Finally, she spoke. In my culture, to save someone's life is not a simple act of kindness. It creates a bond, a sacred bond. Jason tilted his head, unsure of where this was going. A bond? Like, you owe me or something? Because, seriously, you don't know, Lyra interrupted, her glowing amber eyes locking onto his. It is not a debt. It is a connection. In the eyes of my people, it is as though our lives are now entwined. To save a life is to claim responsibility for it. Traditionally, this bond is sealed with marriage. Jason blinked, stunned. He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. For a moment, he thought the translator had glitched. I'm sorry, he finally managed. Did you just say marriage? Lyra nodded solemnly. It is the highest honor among my people. A way of acknowledging that our fates are now tied together. That your kindness has saved me not just physically, but in spirit. Jason leaned back, running a hand through his hair. Lyra, I didn't save you expecting anything like that. I just did what anyone would do. Not anyone, Lyra countered, her voice firm. Many would have left me to die, or worse. You risked yourself to help me. My people would see this as a bond deeper than friendship. Jason stood, pacing a few steps away as he tried to process her words. But marriage? I mean, we're from completely different worlds. Literally. You're an alien. How would that even work? Lyra's expression softened, and she lowered her gaze. I do not expect you to agree. This is not your tradition, and I cannot impose it upon you. But if I return to my people and they learn of your actions, they will view us as bound. To them, refusing the bond would be unthinkable a dishonor. Jason turned back to her, his mind spinning. What happens if we don't go through with it? Lyra hesitated. If my people believe the bond has been broken, they may see it as a betrayal. It could lead to conflict. For you. For your world. Jason's heart sank. So this isn't just about us, is it? It's about keeping the peace with your people. Lyra nodded. Yes. But it is also about respect. I have come to admire you, Jason. Your compassion, your curiosity, your strength. If this bond must be sealed, I would not do so unwillingly. Jason exhaled, running his hand down his face. This is a lot to take in, Lyra. I'm just a guy who studies rocks. I'm not exactly the marrying type, especially not to someone from another planet. Lyra stood, her luminous form casting a faint glow in the darkness. I understand. This is not a choice to be made lightly. But know this, I will honor whatever decision you make, Jason. For the next few days, Jason wrestled with the decision. The logical part of him screamed that it was insane and impossible choice between his quiet, solitary life and a bond with someone from a world he couldn't begin to comprehend. But the deeper, instinctive part of him whispered something else. He thought about how he'd felt the night he found her in the wreckage. The way her vulnerability had stirred something in him he hadn't felt in years. He thought about the nights they spent under the stars, sharing stories about their vastly different lives. And, most of all, he thought about the future. About the possibility of being part of something far greater than himself. On the fourth night, Jason found Lyra in the lab, studying a fragment of her ship's crystalline core. She looked up as he entered, her expression unreadable. I've made my decision, Jason said, his voice steady. Lyra set the fragment down and stood, her gaze searching his. And? Jason took a deep breath. If this is what needs to happen to keep you safe, to keep Earth safe, then I'll do it. But I'm not doing this just because of tradition or politics. I'm doing it because I care about you, Lyra. I've never met anyone like you, and I don't think I ever will again. A faint, radiant smile spread across Lyra's face. You honor me, Jason. Truly. She stepped closer, her glowing hand brushing his. In my culture, this union is not just a formality. It is a promise. A partnership. Are you ready for that? Jason nodded. I think so. That night, under the vast expanse of the desert sky, Lyra and Jason performed the simple ceremony of her people. Using a fragment of her ship's core, Lyra projected a shimmering light around them, an iridescent glow that pulsed with warmth. She spoke in her native language, the words translated softly by her device, vows of trust, respect, and shared fate. Jason echoed them, feeling the weight of each word. When the ceremony ended, Lyra touched her forehead to his a gesture she explained was a sign of eternal unity. The light around them dimmed, leaving only the stars and the faint hum of the device. As they stood together in the quiet night, Jason felt an unexpected sense of peace. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whether from Lyra's people or the universe itself, he knew they would face them together. And for the first time in years, Jason felt like he wasn't alone. The desert morning dawned bright and silent, the world unchanged despite the profound shift in Jason's life. Standing at the threshold of his lab, Jason watched Lyra calibrate a salvaged console from her ship. Her slender hands moved with precision, manipulating controls that pulsed with ethereal blue light. He marveled at the surreal reality of the moment. He, a simple geologist, was now bound to a being from another galaxy. Almost there, Lyra murmured, her voice tinged with excitement as the console emitted a series of chirps. I've activated a signal beacon. If we're fortunate, it will attract a friendly vessel. Jason crossed his arms, leaning against the doorframe. And if we're not fortunate? Lyra hesitated, her amber eyes flicking to him. If those who sabotaged me are the first to detect it, we may have trouble. Jason's heart skipped a beat, but he nodded. Then we'll deal with it. Together. Lyra offered him a soft smile before returning to the console. Your commitment is reassuring, Jason. Few would have accepted this bond, let alone embraced it. Let's just say my life wasn't exactly full of adventure before you showed up, Jason said, attempting a grin. But I'm starting to think I signed up for more than I bargained for. Lyra chuckled, the sound melodic and light. Perhaps. But you are stronger than you realize. The days passed in a mix of tense preparation and quiet companionship. Lyra continued to improve her communication systems, teaching Jason about her technology and her world. Jason, in turn, shared stories about Earth, its beauty, its flaws, and its people. They found common ground in their mutual fascination with the universe, and their bond deepened in ways neither had expected. But the peace did not last. It was just after sunset when the first sign of trouble arrived. Jason and Lyra were sitting outside, watching the stars, when a strange hum filled the air. Lyra sat upright, her glowing skin brightening with tension. Do you hear that? Jason asked, his voice low. Lyra nodded. It's a ship. And it's not friendly. Jason's stomach dropped as a sleek, angular vessel descended from the sky, its metallic surface glinting under the moonlight. The craft hovered above the desert floor, engines humming with an ominous energy. A hatch opened, and 3 figures emerged, tall, armored beings with sharp, angular features and glowing blue eyes. Lyra stood, her posture tense but defiant. They are from the Syndicate, she whispered. The ones who sabotaged my ship. They must have intercepted the beacon. Jason's fists clenched. What do they want? Me, Lyra said simply. And possibly you, now that we are bonded. The lead figure stepped forward, its voice amplified by a mechanical device. Lyra of Alicia, it intoned. You are hereby ordered to surrender. Your actions have violated the accords of the Syndicate, and you must face judgment. Jason stepped forward instinctively, placing himself between Lyra and the Syndicate agents. She's not going anywhere, he said firmly. The figure tilted its head, as if noticing Jason for the first time. And who are you, human? A pet? A servant? I'm her husband, Jason said, surprising even himself with the conviction in his voice. And if you want her, you'll have to go through me. The Syndicate agents exchanged glances, their glowing eyes narrowing. The leader's voice carried an edge of disdain. A bond with a human? How quaint. But irrelevant. Step aside, or you will share her fate. Jason's heart pounded, but he didn't move. Not happening. Before the agents could respond, Lyra stepped forward, her skin glowing fiercely. Enough, she said, her voice commanding. You will not harm him. If you wish to take me, I will come willingly, but only if you guarantee his safety. Lyra, no, Jason protested, but she placed a glowing hand on his shoulder, her touch both firm and reassuring. I will not let them hurt you, Jason, she said softly. This is my fight. But before the syndicate agents could respond, the air crackled with energy. Another ship descended, its design sleek and elegant, bathed in soft golden light. Lyra's eyes widened in recognition. An Elysian vessel, she whispered. The new ship landed, and two figures emerged, tall, regal beings whose shimmering skin mirrored Lyra's. They carried no weapons, yet their presence radiated authority. One of them stepped forward, addressing the syndicate agents with a calm but commanding tone. This is Elysian territory, the figure said. You have no jurisdiction here. Leave now, or face the consequences. The syndicate agents hesitated, their postures rigid. After a tense moment, the leader nodded sharply. This is not over, Lyra of Alicia, it said before signaling its comrades. They retreated to their ship, which rose into the sky and vanished. Jason exhaled, his knees nearly buckling with relief. The Elysian figures approached, their eyes softening as they looked at Lyra. Lyra, one of them said. We feared you were lost. Lyra inclined her head. I was fortunate. Jason saved me. The Elysians turned to Jason, their gazes filled with a mix of gratitude and curiosity. You are bonded? One of them asked. Jason nodded. Yeah. We are. The Elysians exchanged glances, then smiled. Then you are one of us now, Jason Hart. The bond is sacred, and your actions have proven your worth. Jason blinked. Wait, does this mean I'm? Lyra's lips curved into a gentle smile. It means you are welcome among my people, Jason. If you wish to come with me. Jason looked at her, the weight of the decision settling on him. His life on Earth felt small and insignificant compared to the vastness of the universe and the connection he felt with Lyra. The choice was clear. I'm coming with you, he said firmly. The Elysian ship opened its hatch, and Jason followed Lyra inside. As they ascended into the stars, Jason glanced back at Earth one last time. His old life was behind him, but a new 1A life filled with adventure, love, and endless possibilities was just beginning. And for the first time, Jason felt like he was exactly where he was meant to be.